Okay, so thank you everybody for joining. We have about 40 attendees now, so we're just going to get going. So my name is Mary Plunkett. I am the Education Officer at the National Print Museum. So I'm welcoming you here tonight to the first of our online talks, Cairde Cló, which are our print friends of the National Print Museum. So we start tonight with Dave Darcy of One Strongarm. And thank you very much, Dave, for taking part tonight.
Thanks for
and showing us around your studio. So through the wonders of modern technology.
Yeah, it's the most people I've ever had in here. It's 45 people. It's amazing.
Yeah, you've got 45 people in your studio. It's fantastic. So was there anything else I was going to say at the start? So just to thank everybody, please thank you all for coming along this evening and attending. We are delighted with people tonight tuning in from Ireland, obviously down the road, UK, USA, Spain, Indonesia, and more. So thank you very much all for tuning in. And that is it. I will get going and we will have a little look around the studio, please. Dave?
Yeah, okay. So you're currently in the center of my studio on my drying rack. So I'll just show you. This is my Corex Berlin proofing press, and that's where I do most of the work that comes out of One Strongarm. Flatbed proofing press, it's the first thing that I bought when I decided to get myself into letterpress. And when I say the first thing, it was literally the first thing, which is kind of crazy because it's kind of quite an undertaking. But I kind of got obsessed with it. We'll get onto more of the backstory in a little bit, because I think it's actually some of the stuff that Mary's going to ask me about. But just to keep spinning it around a bit. So I have my Corex there. It's where I spend most of my time. This guy here, the type on it is a Vandercook SP15. New rollers are on the way. Great machine. It's also what we have in the museum, Mary, right? Is it an SP15 up there?
The number 4.
Oh, it's a 4. Okay.
Yeah, I think
yeah, there. Over here is my collection. Well, collection of wood type mostly under the table, and then also down here. A pal of mine is a framer, and he made me these trays, which worked out super handy. So they're actually just inverted picture frames, which are now trays of type, which is great. So thanks, Rubio.
That's lovely.
Yeah, super handy.
Nice.
I was always really envious of all of the letterpress printers I followed on Instagram with all their labels on the their tray type, their racks, their cabinets. So got a little bit of that going on. All my big types up on the wall. Spinning over here, back of the room. I have some other. It's a laser cutter on my stone. And my metal type is all at the 2 racks at the door there with the photography equipment sitting in front of it. Might just fly us around here. This is my Arab at the back, and there is a Heidelberg windmill and a JT Marshall foil, tabletop foil press there. I do quite a bit of foil actually recently enough. And then my guillotines. And then over onto my inking table, which I left set up from today's printing just for a little bit of authenticity.
Splash of colour. Lovely.
Yeah?
A splash of colour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was cleaning up and I was like, should I actually clean up, just leave it how it is? And I think that's kind of a bit weirder. And then when I moved in, I built this office in the back. And that's where I sit when I'm using the computer and all that kind of carry on, which I do a lot of because I run a design practice as well. So it's kind of I split my time between here and inside. Yeah, so that's the brief tour. Like,
lovely.
Yeah,
that's great. Thanks, Dave.
Great space. I've also got a really nice roof.
That is very nice.
Which you'll probably get to know in a second if the hails come back, because it's very noisy in here when the hailstones start, and they were coming in pretty hot and heavy earlier. So I might I'll keep an eye on that. But yeah, that's the studio.
That's lovely. So we to go on with the questions then, I suppose, is to bring you back to the start of it. And like, so what was your first introduction to letterpress and kind of what got you started on all of this?
Believe it or not, it was, I don't even know if you remember, Mary, it was the volunteer course in the museum.
Was that actually, that's what I was wondering, that was your very first?
Yeah. That was exactly it. Like, I mean, I have a degree in graphic design. I've been working as a designer for probably, where am I now? Like, I was probably about 10 years designing prior to that. And I think yourself and Jamie Murphy were on the selection panel, and you ran the course with.
We were on the, we were. So to explain the background of this was 2012, if my memory serves correctly. And it was a seminar group of about, I think again, about 8 people, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it was a weekend really of letterpress training, wasn't that it too? With the idea being that those people would become involved with the museum and volunteer in a kind of a slightly trained way, I suppose, really.
Yeah, I think
to assist.
Like from memory, the goal was for it to be a kind of a kind of not surface level, but like fairly, like just so you could kind of help people around on busy periods, like you know, the likes of like Science Week or that kind of carry on. So we got taught a lot about the history and the actual kind of tour that you do. Well, more importantly, the thing that kind of like stuck out for me and got under my skin a bit was a weekend's worth of typesetting with Con, who used to be the head of the chapel in the museum. And I just got like absolutely obsessed with it. Like I was familiar with it from college, and I knew it historically, and it was just like I really enjoyed it. And I think right after that, I had just started working for myself back then. So I anticipated having loads of time in my hands to be a volunteer, but like work got really busy. So that didn't turn into that much time spent in the museum, bar the course itself. But I followed that on with your course at NCAD.
Yeah.
So between those two things, yeah, just kind of printing just kind of, you know, became something that I could really see myself like having an interest in. Mainly for myself though, that was kind of the goal. Being a designer, just to have like client-free output, you know, just to have a way to make stuff basically. Hence the proofing press, because I wanted to make posters. So I needed a large format press. And after spending time with you in Distillers Press in NCAD, I sort of, like I said, I knew about letterpress printing and I knew its history and I knew its connection to my own professional practice and all that kind of stuff. But seeing yourself and Jamie, both of you two in particular, like actually being printers, like it kind of reframed the whole thing in my head. And then I was like, actually, this is a thing that people do. Like, it's not just stuff in a museum and you can go and like hang out in a museum and play with it. These guys have like careers. This is what they actually do. So that sort of kicked the whole thing off. And I spent the next 6 months Google translating a German machine buying websites basically to track down the press. And then the press arrived and I had nowhere to put it. And I had like no material at all. I had no type, I had no furniture, I had no tools. I literally had like the press, which is a bit of a roundabout way of starting with printing, I think. Most people would like get like an Adana or, you know, like some kind of tabletop-y and a few tries of type and build bits up. But like I ended up with a press, like, you know, before, kind of a bit too early on in my plan, I think. So I guess the answer is naivety.
No, yeah.
Enthusiasm and
enthusiasm, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I can.
But yeah, the short answer is the museum and yourself. Yeah, basically, yeah.
Very good. And so at what point then, Dave, did it start becoming kind of your profession and linked into your design work more so than just kind of being this hobby or just kind of doing something for yourself?
So I'd say about maybe 2 years afterwards. It was initially intended to be, like I said, it was for my own output and to get up to speed on what, you know, to kind of teach myself more of what I needed to kind of learn and to get more practice, I set myself projects and I started doing commissions for people, and I started doing like things for exhibitions, and I was still kind of, finding ways to make work basically. And I had an Instagram account and I was kind of sharing loads of stuff with that. And I was really particular about when I had allowed people to, because people were kind of seeing I was doing it and asking me to do stuff. And I was like, I'm not quite sure if I kind of want to do that yet. And because I wanted it to be really good, basically, like I knew that I didn't want my work to go anywhere else until it was of a particularly a passable standard, let's say. Back then, passable. So once I moved the studio for the first time, I made a more conscious decision to actually start actualizing some of the projects that people were asking me to do. And then it turned into agencies and studios and other things like that. And I knew that if I was going to do that, I'd be printing for designers, and I'd be printing for ad agencies, and I'd be printing for other creatives, and I know how particular they are. So I held off for about 3 years before I became like a service provider. But yeah, it just sort of grew into it. I don't know. I mean, I think when people realized that it was a service that they could avail of, they started trying to avail of it. It sort of just kind of happened that way. I kind of couldn't keep it to myself, basically. It was just kind of cool. They were, people were the projects were seeking me out before I was actively seeking them out, which was kind of nice.
Yeah, it's a lovely way for it to happen, isn't it?
Yeah.
And like that, you could say that it's kind of gradual evolution. So can you tell us then a little bit? I suppose you've given us the tour. Can you tell us a little bit about the collection? Where did you find all your stuff?
So when I got the press, it was in a lockup, my brother's lockup, for a good number of months, and I eventually found somewhere to put it, which was even calling it a shed is being very, very generous too. It was practically outdoors with a few fake walls around the edges. It was very, kind of only usable 6 months of the year kind of thing. But I found somewhere to put it. That was the important thing. So after that, I just cold called loads of printers, and I basically got the Yellow Pages up online and started at A and rang every printer in the country, basically, not far off. I literally had a spreadsheet of printers, and most of them I rang had all changed to either light or digital. So they're most of the people that I got to speak to, they were, didn't really even know what I was kind of asking them about. So I refined my questions down quite a bit, and then I got to the point where I was just ringing a place and saying, "Can I speak to your oldest member of staff, please?" And then I kind of explained what I was up to, and then I'd say 1 in 20 knew someone who had a shed and had a few bits of type. And I went around the country picking it up myself, and Swan, who's possibly having to listen to us, we got it in a van and we went around picking up, filled up vans of kind of old bits of type that have been sitting in dusty sheds for God knows how long. And yeah, and then I've done that a few times, and then a lot of it came from most of it's from Ireland. The Corex is from Vienna. A couple of presses came from folks who were wrapping up businesses. A guy from Stoneybatter called me. I think he's seen an article in the Irish Times that I was in, and he contacted me through that. A lot of stuff came from the guys in the UK, Urban Fox. They're letterpress material suppliers. Yeah, collection of various different places and various different amounts. In some cases, I was driving to Clare for a shoebox of tools. It was, yeah, because yeah, I had no idea what I needed basically to get this thing off the ground. And when it became apparent that I had having a press is nowhere near being ready to print, and yeah, I just had to kind of fill in the gaps. Yeah, anyway, it kind of worked
Great stuff. So we have a little bit of a look at some work then, I suppose.
Yeah.
And yeah, what do you want to? Yeah, what would you like to show us?
Let's see. I'll spin you around towards my little table. So because I guess the work that I do here, I suppose I'll probably say a little bit about that. There's my own output, which is, I guess, me and, well, one Strongarm, the work that just comes from the studio. That usually takes the form of like edition prints. That's the kind of format I like to work in as a, I guess, as an artist or as a designer, as a creative. But I also, like you mentioned, I do production work for people. And then occasionally those two things overlap, whereas my own design practice feeds into my letterpress work. And that's, you know, if I do brand new projects, sometimes that's, you know, it's in both parts of my practice, which is kind of the sweet spot for me work-wise, if I'm looking after all aspects of a project. But I do really enjoy production work for designers too. But I'll show you some work. This is a print I finished yesterday. Oh wait, hang on. Actually, see those.
Very good.
Is that backwards for me, or is that okay for you guys?
It's perfect for where I am.
Okay.
Yep.
It's wood type, which came from virgin wood type in the States. So this is the only new type I have, actually.
Oh, lovely. Very nice.
It's Gothic 312, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Very good.
That means anything to anybody? It's this stuff.
Lovely.
And as you can see, it prints like super clean. It doesn't have any of the nicks and things that you would kind of associate with letterpress more readily, but I love it. Like I haven't used it a huge amount, but this has kind of reminded me how much I like it, so I'm probably going to use it a little bit more. I finished that the other day. I'm going to get that out in the world in the next couple of weeks or so. This is something I've done a long time ago. This is quite early on. I think it might have been like, I would say it's probably the first thing that I've done that I still do. Like I kind of re-edition this every now and again. It's been pretty popular. It's Beatles inspired, and they said love 613 times in their lyrics, as you can kind of see there.
There you go. Yeah, it's just
so there's love 613 times, and then obviously their famous song "All You Need Is Love" is over the top of it. This is a plate because I wouldn't have the type or the patience to set that by hand. So that's printed with a plate, and this is wood type over the top of it. I've done a project this year, which is actually hanging in the museum, I think, still.
Yep,
yeah, still up. Called Under Strange Circumstances. This is one of them. It was a series of, I think, 8 by the end of it. It was 8 prints made during strange circumstances, like I said, under lockdown. My crazy ambition was to do 1 a week for the duration of lockdown, which would have been...
I might add, you did maintain for quite a bit of the first lockdown.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was 8 weeks worth, 1 a week for 8 weeks. But I mean, I wouldn't have anticipated then that I was looking down the barrel of making 52 prints, because it's this week like that we...
Yeah,
it's kind of moving patties out. It's kind of crazy. So hopefully when we come back to reality a little bit more, everybody who's in Dublin or Ireland can visit the museum. These will be up for a bit. It's not only myself though, it's the work of 4 or 5 other artists as well.
It's yourself, it's Annie Atkinson, Dan Fine Print, Mazer, and the 10th Man Hello, I think it's the other.
So
yeah, I think that's it.
These are the guys that I made for that edition. They're all thematically linked to what we were all going through this time last year and continue to, so like stay strong. This is some glorious Irish type, which I had for, like, it was pretty early on, but never really had a kind of what I felt like is a valid reason to use it, you know, rather than just kind of using it because I had it. And so I was kind of waiting for a nice project to use it for. It's just kind of perfect for that. it's really, really nice type.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to have, Dave.
It really is.
Any collection of that Irish type is gorgeous.
I don't know, like, there can't be much of that around. Like, I think it's,
Yeah.
I have 2 trays of it, and 2 different kind of sizes and weights. I'll see if I can find it. So here's this guy. And then there's a slightly bigger one as well that was used for the Duckus print.
Gorgeous. Oh, to just translate for anyone who isn't local, Fanawalia is stay home and Duckus is hope.
Oh yeah, thank you.
In Irish. No, just so
I forgot we had an international
audience for once, yeah.
What else have I got to show you? I do a little bit of lineup cutting as well. Is it okay if there's some bad language in this one? Is that all right?
Well, you've warned it now, so that's fine. On you go. Yeah.
That's a line-out cut, and this was for so it's like a 3-color line-out cut. It's not reductive. I know you do a lot of reductive line-out cut, Mary, yourself. They're actually separate plates. So
that's fabulous.
Thanks.
Did you plan all that? Would you plan that now yourself digitally and then kind of transfer
yeah,
to
for this kind of thing, I would 100%. Yeah, I don't generally do that with type so much, but with these guys, I'd plan it all out in 3 plates, print it all out, and break them down into the separated colors and that kind of thing. I do that all digitally before I go near it, but I kind of chop and change. Like sometimes I do it a lot sort of looser. Just kind of depends on the project, I guess.
I know what you mean, yeah.
So yeah, they're the main ways I make work. But there's also the production stuff. Suppose I can show you some of that. So I like this is for like an agency in town called And Open. They're it's a A5 piece of poetry, or it's kind of a spoken word piece, I think.
Lovely.
And my pals in Post Studio made these certs for an art competition, which are very cute. And I do like any excuse to use fluoro inks, which I'm sure you can all gather when you see my work. It's really nice doing work for people like Post, because they're great designers, and they come to me and they give me beautiful work to like make for them, and it's kind of it's a nice way to get to produce like really nice pieces of work that are coming from various places as well, which is kind of cool.
So do you find with that kind of work, Dave, are you finding is a lot of kind of like, are they coming to you with finished artwork, or are they coming to you with wanting typesetting done, or how would you find it?
It's a little bit of both. Most of the production work I do comes from plates, and I guess I should probably show the people plates. Give me 1 second. Actually handy because I have the work here. So these are photopolymer plates, and I'm probably over explaining this to a lot of people who are on here, but maybe it's handy information as well. They're basically made from digital artwork. This was sent to me by my client as a PDF. I send this to Lime Bay in the UK. They turn it into a plate and send it back to me, and that is the outcome of it.
Ooh.
So it just does does the job of type, essentially. If I'm doing production work for people, 9 times out of 10 it'll come from their artwork, their existing artwork, but not always. There's also, it depends on how early they get onto me. Like I finished a project for the Tent Man yesterday, and that was fairly well on in the process when they got me involved, but the front of it's typeset. Using my collection, the back of it is plates to match all the branding of the broader project. So yeah, it's kind of a combination. Like it's the earlier I can start chatting to people about a production project, the better, because I guess it just means you can kind of make suggestions earlier, and you can kind of things can kind of come out of it that you might not get the opportunity to have a client think about if they have finished artwork. Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mix.
So what would be, where do you find inspiration for your personal work?
I think like generally it's type driven. Obviously, a lot of music stuff, a lot of literature, basically like smarter people than me saying cleverer things to me that kind of inspire me, basically. Yeah, it's kind of like a lot of my stuff is inspired by music. A lot of it is things that people, like I'm working on a print. I also designed a magazine called GCN, and hello, if there's any GCN people here. And they, I'm about to make a print for, in conjunction with them. That's just a phrase that came out of a planning session they had for the next 6 months. So like snippets of words just sort of float into my head, and then I kind of can't leave them alone until they're turned into a print. That kind of happens a little bit, but usually it's like they do kind of come from other places, but generally speaking, it's it'd be a lot of things I read or music I listen to or that kind of area. And sometimes I just want to do I want to try something new, like that, like broken up type with the broken up type for that line cut. Like that was an idea before I had a reason to use it. I wanted to do something kind of like fractured and overlaid and using kind of overprinting to make something kind of interesting out of it. So that was the execution of that preceded me finding a fitting piece of copy for it, if you get me. So,
yeah, I know what you mean.
A bit of a mix, like.
That's cool. And so leading on from that, so who, or would you have designers or other printers or anything who might influence your work, or did you find particularly inspirational?
I do, in like, I don't know if there's like particular people, but I definitely keep an eye on what other printers are up to. But that would more often be technical stuff and process driven, like just like printers who were using like laser cutting. Like I recently got a laser, but I've actually had it for a while, but I only recently got it fired up. So I'm gonna start making stuff to print with using the laser. So I've been sort of paying attention to people who already do that and see how they operate and how they work. So most of what I kind of glean from other printers is, yeah, it's more kind of technical than visual, I suppose, maybe.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But I guess I pay attention to a lot of it, so it's probably all like seeping in and permeating and kind of regurgitating into the work that seems kind of natural, but I don't like. Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm going to jump into the Q&A for a second, just because I see one or two are up there.
Oh, yeah.
So James Jenkins is just wondering what face was the virgin wood type? I
think it's called Gothic. I'm going to say 312, but I can fact check that for you.
I'm going to put that in there anyway.
I think that's, if it's not that, it's the only one in their collection that has the word Gothic and a number. I just might have the number.
There you go. Great stuff. Aaron Backloff. Hi, Aaron. How are you?
Hi,
Aaron. Do you know?
Aaron may be able to answer that question about
actually, that's a very good point.
Wood type.
What was it? Do you know who would have manufactured the Irish wood type?
It is the Little, so of York. Yeah, hang on.
Cool.
So for the longest time, I thought it was a face called Colin Kill, but it's actually not. Where's my thingy?
We can see the.
Can you see it?
Right over there again.
They're called the Little of York, which is they're a foundry from the UK, which I believe bought up a lot of smaller foundries in the UK as well a long time ago, and most of my type comes from these guys. So I guess they were a big supplier to the Irish market at some point, but I don't know too much about the face or its origin.
Cool. Well,
I'll send it on to you, Erin. I'll get you to sign it.
I was going to say our previous lecturer, which was Dr. Dermot McGuinn, talking about the Irish face, and that was about a very particular metal type. But Dermot might be.
Oh yeah.
He might well be somebody to tell you exactly what that is.
Is Dermot the gentleman who identified the flaw in the most common reproduction of the proclamation?
Oh, I don't know, actually. That's a good point. Yeah. Oh, really? What's the most common flaw?
So there's I think there's a face in it that was reproduced. So there's a copy of the proclamation made a couple of years after it was made by the Irish Times, I think, and it was a commemorative piece. I don't know how long after the actual one was printed.
Oh yeah.
More often than not, when you see a reproduction of it, like digitally or elsewhere, you're looking at a reproduction
of that one.
Yeah, because I think it's got some Gale in it, and Gale was drawn like 3 years later, so it couldn't have been used in the original. So I think
I love it. That's hilarious.
Extra level of
the reason I know there's a whole pile of
anachronism, I believe they're called.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. What else have we got? Carl Dark asks, what is your preference for paper?
Somebody just asked me this the other day. So it depends on the project. Obviously, I use a lot of color plan for production stuff because it's really, really nice to print on. It's got a really broad range of color. So even just opening my plan chest, like that's all color plan.
Lovely. Yeah.
There's like 52 colors. It prints super well. It's really, really nice. I use that a lot. I also use the most common poster sheet I use, for want of a better term, is Favini Crush. I use that quite a bit. It's in. This is a branding project I've done for a coffee company in Dublin called Farmhand. So that the white part's Crush and the orange part is color plan.
Lovely.
Yeah. Crush is made from food residuals. So this one's made from corn, and the brown counterpart of it, which is this guy, is made from coffee residuals, which is kind of nice for a coffee company. So I use Crush a lot. I use color plan. I use a sheet called Old Mill, Bianco Old Mill. Started using that quite a bit. It's kind of quite similar to color plan, but it's it's got more air in it, so it's kind of thicker. And then when it gets down to like small run, kind of like edition prints, I would sometimes use the likes of Somerset or Fabriano. It's really project specific. I don't hold a lot of stock on the floor here, except for Crush, because I use it a lot. But I suggest you check out Crush. It's super. It's actually really economical as well, but it's got a really great environmental credentials as well, which is kind of appealing to myself and a lot of clients at the moment. Yeah.
Cool. I'm just answering another one by text there. Oops, excuse me. Great stuff. Okay, so I should go back to my own big list then, if you wouldn't mind. So leading on to that, from kind of detailed questions, do you have a favorite of your type and stuff that you find yourself always going back to?
I think the face that I use most frequently, probably just because it's most versatile. Well, isn't it even versatile? Well, I don't know. A lot of letterpress type tends to be condensed grotesques, which are these kind of guys, or there's a whole tray of them behind me. This kind of carry on. So I believe this is by the guys from York as well, the little, I think it is I'm gonna get this wrong, so I'm gonna check. I know there's people who know the answer. They're screaming at their screens. Please hold. It is number 51, and it does a lot of jobs. You know, it doesn't have a huge amount of its own character. Like the Irish thing, it took me 5 years to find a reason to use it. You know, like a legitimate reason. I don't love huge amounts of character in typography. I try and inject the character with like structure and layout and color and all of those kinds of things. I think so. This kind of thing would be probably most of the work that comes out of the studio looks something kind of similar to that.
Cool.
Didn't tend to name them, so I can't give you names. They're usually just codes and reference books back then. I guess if they got popular, they developed names colloquially, and then that became what they were kind of referred to. But a lot of the time, it was just, you know, they were just kind of catalog numbers.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
The short answer to that then is probably condensed grotesques.
You've worked on some collaborations and things. What draws you to those?
It's a nice way to work, essentially. One Strongarm is, typically speaking, just myself. So it mixes that up a little bit as well. I have sort of always been really interested in collaborations. I used to, like, in another lifetime, I ran this thing called Stint Eastwood, which was all collaboration-based interactions between various different kinds of artists and multimedia kind of stuff. So that would have carried over a lot into my own professional practice, and that would have carried then in turn into my letterpress print practice. But it's like tons of my friends are designers. It just kind of naturally happens, you know. A lot of, I think it's just good to kind of bang your head together with people sometimes. It's a nice break from your own sort of you kind of solo process, I suppose. Yeah, I really enjoy it. It's a good way to work.
So leading on from that, what has been your, can you tell us maybe about a favorite project that you worked on? Have you had a favorite so far?
Yeah, maybe recently I'd say I think this guy here, it's not a collaboration, but it's definitely one of my favorite projects. Actually, the under strange circumstances thing is probably one of my favorite projects, like just broadly speaking. I found that really super satisfying. It was like really well timed for a billion different reasons, even for myself. It was the only reason I was coming into the studio at the time, that kind of thing. And it just landed really, really well. People really appreciated it. They were super supportive of the project, and it made loads of money for charity. And it was just for a load of different reasons, that was a really kind of satisfying project. I just finished a print for, which I can't actually show you because it comes out tomorrow, but you should check out Hen's Teat. They're an ad agency in their creative agency in town, and I'm one of 6. That's kind of more collaboration, I guess, in a roundabout way. One of 6 prints that they've made for the folks in the St. Patrick's Festival, and they're coming out tomorrow. I'm really happy with that. That's probably the one that I've been most excited about recently. So yeah, that's kind of
cool.
Yeah,
that's brilliant. Thanks, man. Yeah. So have you used Letterpress with other media at all, or do you have plans to?
I wouldn't identify as a purist print wise. A lot of people would be. I'll put anything through my press that I can safely get through my press. When you say other media, like I use modern, like I have a laser cutter. I've used 3D printing. I lino cuts, wood cuts. In terms of mixed media, I recently just finished making a board game for an artist based in Dublin. So that spanned a bunch of different medias. There's like 3D printed little player pieces. There's cards that were produced by a card maker. They weren't letterpress prints, they were like playing cards. I've gotten recently into bookbinding, so I made all of the boxes, kind of, what do you call them when they close over?
Oh, the clamshell, lovely.
Yeah, I made a bunch of clamshells to hold it all. The board itself it's kind of uses bookbinding techniques to make a board game, but it's got a laser cut top, and the box is foiled on the outside. Some of the details are letterpress printed. So yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
I kind of get it in wherever I can, basically. You know, like, it's a great way to add an extra dimension to a project. Like, I've done a bunch of books, small pamphlets, probably more than books, earlier on. Was it early this year or late last year? I think it was early this year. And the innards for that are all digitally printed, but the cover is letterpress printed. So even though it doesn't maybe apply to every project I do as a designer, I often find ways to kind of, you know,
bring it in.
Just one portion of it. Yeah. Even a belly band or something along those lines, just to finish off a project is kind of nice. Like,
cool. So I suppose bringing it back around to the kind of the start of the questions and stuff like this is what is the attraction of letterpress for you? Like, what makes you print, or what makes you use this medium, I suppose?
It's like, beyond the fact that it's really, really satisfying from a technical perspective and from a production perspective, like, there's no better way to print. Like, there's like, well, I don't think there is. I'm obviously extremely biased, but like, there are faster ways, and there are less expensive ways, and there are there are more technically proficient ways. But I don't think it's ever really been topped in terms of having a side-by-side, like, Pepsi challenge approach to checking like a piece of print compared to a piece of letterpress print. It's just like, there's no comparison. Bad language. But I mean, like, I was doing that project I was doing for 10 Man last night. Like, when I got the first proof off the press, like, I was genuinely excited. I don't know if that is, and that's a production job that I'm doing for a client, and it gets all the attention that I would give my own work. But it's when you get the ink levels and the roller height and the impression just right, it's like, it's just beautiful. Like, I don't know. I can kind of over romanticize it in my head sometimes, but I think it's pretty, it's not really comparable to any other form of print. Excuse me. And as a designer, like, I used to work in like lighthouses when I was in college, and I've kind of been around bits and pieces of print for a long time now, and I definitely, I can fairly confidently say letterpress printing is not, nor will be, topped in terms of a production method. Like, it's, yeah. And then all of the fun of actually, like, I mean, look at all the stuff I get to play with. You know what I mean? Like, beyond just actually the output, the process is extremely satisfying. It's like, the output is unquestionably fantastic, but it's also, I mean, you know yourself, Mary, I get a lot of enjoyment out of this particular way of printing. And I think it's important too. Like, it's not just, my own insular satisfaction. I think it's important that people still make work this way, because there's not a ton of us. There's a lot more than there used to be. I was talking to Jamie the other day, and I think 2 of his recent graduates, 3 actually that I can think of, have all set up presses. So the letterpress population of Ireland is tripled. Maybe doubled. Yeah, it's, which is fantastic. It's really, really, like, I'm so excited to see it, and like, they're all onto me, asking me questions, and I'm trying to be as helpful as I can. And it's like that. I think the more of us, the better, like, because it's sort of like the same reason I like seeing good design. Like, I know, like, if I walk around town and I see a project for, I don't know, some like cultural event, and it's really well executed, like, I get a kick out of that. I think it adds to the sort of like cultural landscape of the city, I suppose, and everywhere else too.
Yeah, the letterpress, I've found, especially on Instagram and stuff like that, like, I mean, the letterpress community is very nice, actually, I mean, for the most part. So you know what I mean? So everyone's very supportive, and
you look around, you can find
you find someone, but
no, they are, and
lovely.
like, I mean, even like way more locally, like everybody in the museum, yourself included, Jamie, anybody I met in the UK through Jamie, Erin, who's on here, like I can't count the amount of times that people have like freely given their time to like sort my shit out, basically, which is fantastic. Yeah, you just gotta, like, in some cases you gotta pose your questions really, really carefully. But it's an incredibly supportive community, and that, like, when I started off printing, that was something I was really kind of struck with too. And it definitely made me, when somebody asked me something about letterpress, or they need a hand, or they need a direction to go figure out how to find a press, or like where to get paper or something, I kind of try and remember the amount of people who've been super helpful to me, and, you know, kind of pass that on a little bit.
Pass it on, yeah, I know what you mean. So I'm going to pull back to the chat here now. I've got one last question, but I'm going to finish on this one. So I'm just going to run into the chat for a quick and have a look here. So we've Mark Smith. Hey, Mark, how are you? Has Brexit affected the timeline for paper and ink stock arriving to you?
Do you know what? I don't know if Lisa from Line Bay is on here, but that's the thing. That's the only place I've noticed. My plates take a long time to get back to me, which is problematic to say the least. All of my stock generally comes from suppliers in Dublin who are getting it elsewhere.
Yeah.
So by the time I'm asking them for the small amount that I need, they've already gone through that process. But I've noticed that they're not keeping as, it takes a long time if I want something rare, but I use the same stuff quite frequently. But plates coming from the UK has turned into, like, it used to be 2 days and now it's like 10.
Yeah, no, there's bigger lead in times. I know I've only heard this anecdotally myself. I was talking to a paper supplier last week, and they were saying there's a place based in the UK that I would have used a lot over the last few years. And I think they're finding things are a bit better now. But initially it was like some things were going through fine. Some things were 2 weeks. Some deliveries were taking up to a month. And that was just going from London to Ireland. So it's a...
it's like, it's a minor frustration for, you know, one letterpress printer in Dublin can't get his plates quick enough is not really, you know, it's...
I suppose it's it's a symptom of a wider issue, but I know.
There's bigger things at play with those kinds of questions, but that's the only direct... I mean, I used to buy stock from GF Smith, because I could buy really small quantities. So I've just stopped doing that. Like, I mean, it's just, you know, I used to buy
I know what you mean. It's just... I have a comment here from Maggie Marley, who says she's waiting 10 days for her plate from Lisa. So she's glad it's not just her.
It's not just me. Perfect.
I know, there you go. Cool. So we've done that one. Lovely. Okay, so Lionel Franciscus, I hope I pronounced it correctly. Is there a resurgence for letterpress? And how would you get younger designers excited about the print medium, or will it remain specialized, do you think?
So it's never gonna be anything that competes with, you know, like a large production house. But so I guess by extension of that, it is specialized, but its role is not to be competitive in that market. Its role is to be its role is to be the best at its particular service, and that service is just to a smaller market now. I don't think that they're, you know, like, I'm not going to print 50,000 flyers for somebody. I'm going to assume.
I know it's a different thing.
I don't really look at it the same thing, and I don't really think that they exist in the same kind of world, although they're both print. I probably, like, all of my design projects end up in print, and most of them are litho or digital. You know, like, from inside, if it comes out of in there, it's going out to some, you know, some printers that I use for like my production projects. In terms of getting people interested, like I put someone in front of a letterpress machine or get them into the museum, and I would I dare them to not find it interesting. Basically, it's really it speaks for itself. It's really exciting material. It's steeped in history, and if you were, I don't know if that question came from someone who's in education, but if you manage to get the students that you mentioned into a situation where they could be hands-on, which is a great thing about the museum, it is, you go and you play with stuff, you know, like it's not every museum allows you to do that. So if you can get somebody, whether it's like a family member or like students that you might be teaching, if you can get them into an environment where they can play with type and see the immediacy of you know, type and ink and paper interacting and turning into something that didn't exist 30 seconds ago was pretty spectacular. I don't know any reason a design studio would find, or design student wouldn't find that pretty fascinating.
Okay, I think we're approaching the hour, so I shall wrap it up with one last question and say, what do you think is the future of letterpress, and what role can printing museums play?
The future of letterpress, I like it's that, like I feel like it's that idea of it being a resurgence. I can kind of be insulated from, because I exist in this kind of bubble where I know lots and lots and lots of letterpress printers, but they're all over the world. So it can kind of seem like there is, I probably miss a resurgence happening here. But having said that, there's 3 printers I know in the last like month who are setting up new print studios. So it's definitely on the rise. I think it's super exciting to see. I think the more great print that goes out in the world, the more people will expect to see great print. So it's a kind of a self-fulfilling, whatever that phrase is. I think, yeah, it's the more of it, the more people will desire it, and the more people who know that they can get it as a service that someone in their town or their city is supplying, the more people then will see it. So, I mean, what, can you repeat the question, please? I just started rambling there.
No, you could. No, you got the picture. The end of the question was, what role can printing museums play in the future of letterpress?
Well, I think they're integral to it. Like if it wasn't for the printing museum, I wouldn't be a letterpress printer. Like that's exactly the sequence of events that has me standing in front of my computer talking to 53 enthusiastic future letterpress printers. I'll go get presses. So yeah, I mean, they're like, I guess the role is of the museum is to remind people, number one, that this was the only way that printed matter was made at one point. Like if you've held a book that's older than like 50 years old, somebody probably hand set that, which is like, I think that information is kind of lost on people a little bit, which blew my mind. Like even phone books, like, you know, like, I mean, they would have been considerably smaller, but they were all typeset, which is kind of crazy to think about now. And I think it also gives people an appreciation of the work that went into that kind of thing. And that just, well, personally speaking, that just makes it something kind of like, I guess at this point, that's almost otherworldly. Like, I mean, like my life wasn't always entirely digital. I'm probably a little bit older than, if somebody's mentioning students, they're probably like close to half my age, but you know, they're like, they probably don't realize what went into the production of a book. I'd say most of them don't, unless they're designers. So museums get to tell them that. And like, I'd say out of, you know, if there's like 1 out of every 20 people that you can get into a museum learns that and kind of takes that away, I think that's kind of, you know, that's, I guess that's the role. Like I don't think that the National Print Museum will ever be a breeding ground for future letterpress printers, but like, I'd say you could probably get 1 or 2 a year, you know, if you really tried.
Great stuff. Dave, thank you so much. We will leave it at that. Thanks a million for your time this evening and answering all our questions and everything. Very much appreciated.
Thanks for listening.
No problem at all. And thank you, everyone, for taking part. We thoroughly enjoyed that. And we shall see you back here, I hope, sometime in the next few weeks for another interview with somebody else in their studio, wherever that shall be. We shall let you know. So keep tuned in and we'll let you know. Brilliant stuff. Thanks all. Bye-bye.